to another scholarship highlight brought to you by the Center for Firearms Law at Duke University School of Law. This series is a chance for us to further the center's mission of broadening and deepening the scholarly conversation around firearms law by engaging directly with some of the scholars who are turning out innovative and interesting work in the area. My name is Joseph Blocher. I'm faculty co-director of the center, and this week we are very fortunate to be joined by Professor Sheila Simon of the Southern Illinois University School of Law. Professor Simon, in addition to her academic work, has extensive experience in state and local government, including serving as the lieutenant governor of the state of Illinois from 2011 till 2015. Which I think gives her incredible practical, personal, and professional expertise with which to talk about the topic we'll be addressing today. Her just published article, On Target, Assessing Gun Sanctuary Ordinances That Conflict with State Law, which was just published in a really interesting symposium edition of the West Virginia Law Review dedicated to the question of home rule. Thanks so much for being here with us, Sheila.
Thanks for having me and being interested in the topic of the article. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating article. And I really mean it when I say that you, I think, are just uniquely well-placed to write it, given your personal and professional experience, and the fact that this issue involves really the intersection of firearms law, state law, and local government law. And in fact, I guess I should have added that Illinois is really like the perfect setting for this because, as you note in the article, this is the state where the preemption movement really took off after the Morton Grove Ordinance. And it's really the state where in recent years, the gun sanctuary movement took the name and then started taking its first steps. So I guess just to set the stage, would you mind saying a little bit about the gun sanctuary movement, kind of what it's for, what it's against?
Yeah, it started in Effingham County, Illinois, which is just, 60 miles north of here. It's in Southern Illinois. It was a reaction to a reaction. So there are shootings in Parkland, Florida. People get understandably upset, want to do something. Members of the State House and Senate propose a series of bills, and folks in more rural areas of the state look at these bills and say, wow, we don't want you to do that. And several county boards start enacting resolutions recommending that their state senator and representative vote against this. And that's really common, happens on issues all the time. One county, Iroquois County, started that, and then Effingham County picked it up, but they said, we want to add more punch. We want to do more than just say, hey, please don't vote for this stuff. We want to call ourselves a Second Amendment sanctuary jurisdiction as a county. So they enacted that ordinance, and it turned out to be something that really took off in the majority of counties in Illinois and in many counties in other states across the country.
And it's really nice, and an important point you make there about sort of contextualizing. This kind of local state pushback, of course, happens across lots of different issue areas. It's really helpful to have that context. The article also does this really interesting thing of contextualizing the concept of sanctuary, which is, the history here goes way, way, way back. The term, the concept, and and you tell some of the history, and then also talk about how really in the 1980s it took on a different kind of legal meaning, I guess, or legal use in the United States. So could you, I know it's hard to say in a few minutes, but could you give us a sense of that sort of history as well?
Yeah, it was really fascinating stuff to look into and to find out that this predates Christianity. It's a concept that you can escape to your local temple, house of worship, whatever it might be, to escape many things, particularly including an unjust conviction. And it was formalized before our country as it is now was founded. It was formalized, agreed upon by a series of popes, and agreed upon in English law. And you could just give up your worldly goods, go live in the church for the rest of your life, and you wouldn't have the penalty that was about to be executed against you carried out. So it was really a place you could go to be safe. So that was the old idea, morphed gradually into more of an idea than an actual physical space. And particularly in the United States in the 80s during the immigration debate, it was both a way to keep someone safe and a way to draw some attention to the issue, to say, hey, we're keeping someone in our church here to keep them from being unjustly deported, And those of you in this congregation, those of you in this community should know about it. So in addition to having this person stay with us, we're having her talk about her experience and her reason for opposing this deportation. So it's been both a hard and fast legal thing and more of a policy tool more recently.
And it's interesting too that the gun sanctuary movement, to bring back to kind of the focus here, is kind of pulling on both those threads. It seems to me like it's partly legal, it's partly just oratory rhetoric, etc. So I guess to come back and map that concept onto the gun debate, which, as you talk about in the paper, involves, among other things, the question of like which level of government we want to have primary responsibility for regulating guns. And as it is now, that there's a division, right? And federal law has, some role to play with prohibited classes of persons, for example. And then in some states, like 8 to 10, including some really big states, you have some really, some stringent gun laws. And then in a handful of states where you don't have preemption laws, you have at least some room for local control. So there's like at least 3 possible levels here. But as you know, it's a debate sometimes that's confounding of where you might expect, political liberals and political conservatives to go. So I wonder if you could just say a little bit about what strikes you as kind of interesting or surprising about the way that sort of level of government question plays out here.
Right, it's a really interesting question because of the strategic choices you make, right, and the alliances that are usually built up, right. If you're an advocate of someone's rights and you want to have them asserted at the highest level possible and you want it to be nationally effective, great, go the federal route, use whatever tools you have that way, or a state route as a next best, and probably local action, because it's so diffuse, would be the hardest to do. On the other hand, if there are some things that you really want to retain local control on, then the local avenue seems to be the ideal way to express how your community might be different from another community that's 100 miles away. And a lot of the history of advocacy for firearms possession in the United States has been focused at that local level until more recently, and now it seems there's more of a move to regulate at both the state and the national level. And then that winds up with the situation in Effingham County, where Effingham County is in a state which is now getting used to enacting more and more statewide measures and saying, as a part of this state, as a subdivision of this state, we don't like what the state is doing and we wish we could opt out. And I think it's ineffective legally, but that's the position, and it's a strategic choice, right? School issues, for example. K through 12 schools are really deeply held to be a local issue. There's some national and some state regulation, but we like local control. And here I think maybe it was a mistake of people who like that local control to let some of it slip up the food chain.
It's so interesting because in some ways it's the perfect sort of, I don't know, piece to fit with the preemption movement on guns, which is we had the same situation of cities that would like to opt out of the statewide deregulatory approach,
Right.
that you may be Phoenix or whoever it is, like wants to actually have a gun law. And you're like, well, if you're in Arizona, you just can't do that. Or Florida, for a large part, you just can't do that. And it's also, the case that like you might have different approaches for different kinds of laws, like open carrying. You could totally imagine there's different approaches in Chicago than there are in other places in Illinois, just because open carry means different things. Same in North Carolina.
In your article, which was very useful to me in writing my article about firearms localism, really did a good job of lining up that this is maybe not uniquely, but certainly not like other issues. It's geographically based, or it can be geographically based. And as someone who considers myself part of both worlds, particularly when I was lieutenant governor, I had my home in Carbondale, which is rural, and live at my folks' house sometimes, which is population 400, I think. Maybe it's gone up to 600 lately.
Wow.
And then I had an apartment in Chicago, right? And you can't get more different worlds and more different attitudes, about what makes you safe. In one place, what makes you safe is many other people around, and and seeing lots of people on the street when you're walking home, and hoping that none of them have guns. And in another place, what makes you feel safe is knowing that there are very few people around, and knowing that you have a gun in case someone does come around.
Yeah.
Really different and very geographically based.
Yeah, and it could be, as it, in Carbondale as it was for me growing up here, it's like if somebody had a rifle, it probably deer season, and it has nothing to do with anything else. They're just kind of going hunting, and
Right.
that experience. I wonder. It's funny because in the article itself, I wonder if this informs what I take to be your kind of nuanced take on sanctuary. So most of the commentary and scholarship, I'll say, that I've seen on sanctuary, the gun sanctuaries rather, has been kind of extreme to one side or the other. It's usually like this is terrible, or this is wonderful. And it's not as much of like, okay, what are actually the benefits and costs, and kind of how do they play out? And it seems to me like you've got kind of a middle position here, in the sense of like, there's some benefits, there's some costs, but let's actually kind of consider it for what it is, rather than just, this is for guns or against guns, and therefore I'm against it or for it, right? So I wonder if you could say a little bit about kind of what you see is, I don't know if benefits and costs is exactly the right words, upsides, downsides, kind of what you see happening here in terms of how we should evaluate it, like normatively, is it a good thing?
Yeah. So I think I started off working on this thinking, what a silly idea, right? I think, am I not going to be able to buy gas at my favorite gas station in Effingham? Because I think their county has adopted a silly ordinance. But the more I looked at it, and I still think that legally it doesn't have an impact. And certainly that's the way it was first proposed by the folks there in Effingham County. They're like, this is a statement. We're not going to change our laws. We're not going to carve out a place within Illinois for our own laws. But what I realized that it did was it performed a democratic function, right? In the sense of adding to how our democracy works. In particular, for these local jurisdictions, like most of Effingham County, if you live outside of Effingham, you're not going to have a city government. You're just going to have the county government and then your state rep and senator. So you have even fewer layers to be able to voice your concern, fewer abilities, fewer people who have the ability to have an impact on it. And this got the word out, right? This caught attention, this spread. It was a vehicle for people to be able to voice their concern, even if they're not in the majority, even if it doesn't have a legal impact. I think it's a way to catch the ear of those legislators who are in the majority and have them say, hey, maybe slow down, take a minute to consider our perspective, which is very different from yours, and maybe we can come up with a better law in the end.
And that point there that you just made about voice and audience actually is a perfect segue to my next question about audience. And here I get to plug another one of your works. Among other things, you're a co-author of book Legal Writing, I think 4th edition now. So you, as in your professional career, have been attuned to questions of audience and different audiences and your different in your different roles. I wonder who you think is the audience for this piece. Like, who is this in conversation with? What do you hope they take away by reading this fantastic article?
So this is such a new thing that I'm really targeting judges and the folks who work with the judges where it's coming up for the first time and they're trying to figure out, what the heck do I do with this brand new issue? In addition, lawyers who are advising counties and cities where this does come up, and the county board or the city council is asking them, hey, can we do this? Will it have a legal impact? Will it do anything? And I hope that will help to settle some of the questions about the limited legal impact, but you can still do it and you can still use it as a way to have a very important voice.
Very important voice. It's always kind of a nice place to wrap up. So let me say again, thank you so much for being here, Professor Sheila Simon from Southern Illinois University School of Law. Thanks to all of you who are able to join us. Please send any questions, comments, or thoughts to us by email. We are at firearms@law.duke.edu. You can find our webpage online at law.duke.edu/firearms. Follow us on Twitter at Duke Firearms Law, or subscribe to our blog, Second Thoughts, which you can find through the webpage. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time.